glad I'm not wrong, but holy shit, in this case, do I hate to be right. When I gave my position on Kamala Harris a few months ago, people didn't like it. I have like 3 total videos where the like percentage is lower than 95%, and yeah, that one's by far the lowest. I thought the election could go either way. I really did, but I'm still really not surprised that Donald Trump won. I said before the election, again, I didn't know which way it was going to go, but I said it's going to look super obvious either way. Either it'll be such a referendum on abortion that Trump will lose, or it'll be such a referendum on the economy and the fact that we stuck with Joe Biden and his mashed potato brain until the bitter end. It'll be a referendum on that and Trump will win. So what I'm going to do today is talk about why Donald Trump won, why Kamala Harris was an absolutely terrible choice, and then we're going to look at the cope from the left. I think it's actually really simple why Donald Trump won. I think it's the economy. The economy is absolutely horrible. And don't give me, but inflation was down to 2.5%. The accumulative inflation since the pandemic is it's unbearable for everybody. When people are desperate, they vote for change. This is actually a global trend we've been seeing. Lots of countries like Argentina and even countries, in Europe, they flip back and forth between nationalistic, right populist type candidates to more left-leaning socialist type candidates. They just go back and forth because nothing's working. And so they just think, well, whatever the opposite is, that's obviously what we need to go with. I'm not here to defend Donald Trump on the economy in any way, shape, or form. The only thing I would say is we did have a good economy when he was president before COVID arrived. People didn't really think about it too hard in the ballot box. They just knew that what we have right now wasn't working. People are inherently self-interested, which you cannot fault people for. I honestly thought that abortion would be a significant enough factor to cancel out the economic disparity, but I think I was wrong about that. Now, here's how I would explain that, trying to be logical. Inflation affects everybody, whereas abortion doesn't. And you might be saying, oh my God, how could you say that? 1 in 4 women will have an abortion at some point in their lifetime, but lifetimes are pretty vast, okay? Elections operate on small time scales, and there are around 1 million abortions a year currently, which that's a lot of people, but it's a small percent of the population. If you can understand how a person can think that a genocide is currently happening in Gaza, but they will vote for Kamala Harris, even though, Kamala Harris is just going to continue sending Israel all the bombs it wants to keep doing that, then you get what it's like. You know what it's like to betray your own moral intuitions over self-preservation. And I think the economy was just the single biggest issue, despite all the other things. It was, the classic, plug your nose and vote in your own self-interest. The rest of the issues, I don't view them as being all that significant. If the economy had actually been really good, but all these other issues I'm about to talk about still existed, I think Trump actually would have lost. Trump nuking the proposed border legislation, that probably helped him out because immigration was the 3rd highest rated issue among voters. I'm going to talk more about this in the cope section, but the tone policing of the left is that does not help. What people seem to not understand about Donald Trump is that he's a counterculturalist. Popular media has been left-leaning forever. And now all of a sudden, what? We have all these bro podcasts and surrogate fathers on the internet? Where did that come from? Because for decades, it's all been on one side. The difference between Donald Trump and, for example, Ron DeSantis is that Ron DeSantis is probably more competent, But Trump is better at saying fuck you to everybody that's been calling half the country uneducated racists for decades. The tone policing electorally, I think it only really hurts a few people in the middle, moderates who are like, okay, well, if you can't take a joke, then I'm going to vote Republican. I won't vote for a party that can't take a joke. But I think it's the major reason why Trump in particular is the right's go-to person. I don't think that was a major reason in 2016. I think it was a big reason, maybe like the third or fourth biggest reason. But I think today it's probably, I don't know, maybe like the second or third biggest reason. Another huge factor why Trump won is the wars. He talks about that his talking point about how, there was no conflict when he was president. I mean, that's false, but it wasn't like what it is today. Again, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. I don't think people actually intellectualize this kind of thing. It's just an observation. But people in America are absolutely disgusted that we can send over $100 billion to other countries in one single aid package while Americans can't feed their families. I mean, Jesus Christ, I was looking up the statistics on this. There were a little over 600,000 abortions in 2021, but there were over 1 million last year. 2024, we're going to have even more than that. That screams for an explanation. That is not a natural variation. And what's the best explanation? Well, people are getting married later in life and they're having kids later on in life in America. And yes, there's personal choice to that, but consistently, one of the biggest reasons people say that is because they can't afford to get married or to have children. It's always way at the top. In terms of why he won, I really think the economy is basically the only thing that needs to be said. But those other things, I think those were factors too. And the thing about wars, that plays into the economy as well. So now I get to do the I told you so thing about Kamala Harris. But I want to be clear about something. I actually blame almost none of this on Kamala Harris. I'm going to go over, her faults and tell you why I think she was incompetent. But it's the Democratic establishment's fault and Joe Biden's fault that we ended up with Harris as the candidate. So I don't know if a sports metaphor will help, but, for example, it's not Doc Rivers' fault the Bucks suck in the NBA. Ultimately, it's not his fault. It's the owner and the general manager's fault for firing their previous coach when they had a good record and then bringing in somebody who it just wasn't warranted. Joe Biden has had Jimmy Carter levels of disapproval ratings for over 2 years and mashed potatoes for brains for 4 years, if not more. He should have been forced to state, "I'm not running again," 2 fucking years ago. The writing has been on the wall for that for years, especially with regard to his age. Even Democrats, the majority of them for years have been saying that he's too old to run. And I don't want to hear shit from establishment Democrats and partisan hacks who towed the party line about, oh, how precious democracy is. You are the idiots who said you're riding with Biden till the very last second, thwarted democracy, didn't give us a primary, and that's why Trump is president. I know he said it was because of the economy that Trump won, but that's only with regard to the race we ended up with. With regard to Kamala versus Trump, the economy was the thing. If we would have had a primary, Donald Trump would not have won this election. I feel confident about that. Do you know how many fewer votes Kamala Harris got than Joe Biden? 15 million. I don't need to say anything else about how this was clearly not the person to go with, but, I will. Bottom line, I kind of already said this. If there had been a primary, somebody who Democrats wanted to vote for would have been the nominee. I mean, she lost the popular vote. She lost the popular vote by 5 million. I mean, if that's not a referendum against the Democratic Party, then nothing is. Kamala Harris ran for president, but dropped out because she knew she would get 0 primary votes, even in her own state. Her approval rating as vice president was in like the 30s, only around a year ago. It shot up after Biden dropped out, and I remember that pretty clearly. It rocketed up to like the 60s, but that was completely fake. That was just hope. For the first time in a long time, people had hope that Donald Trump would not become president. Biden would have lost to him also. I was watching the news every now and then last night, and I mean, I was hearing a lot of analysts say things like, oh, look, she ran a great campaign, but she just ended up... What in the fuck are these people talking about? Look at this answer of hers.
I mean, I've made many mistakes. And they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Look, that answer was clearly an affront to fluidity.
Nobody elected Kamala Harris. Nobody wanted her to be president when we were given a choice between nominees. She was uniquely terrible at articulating points, and she changed her mind on issues based on whatever was politically expedient at the time. The exact opposite of, for example, Bernie Sanders. A primary would have given us a Newsom-Whitmer ticket or a Buttigieg-Shapiro ticket. I don't like Pete Buttigieg at all as a politician, but probably would have won. And no, it wasn't too late. If you think that Donald Trump is an existential threat, and you think that the polling has been telling you the writing's on the wall that Trump is likely to win, which it had been forever, then do a fucking primary. This is just cope to say, well, we had no choice and we had to go with her and she was the best choice because she was vice president. Of a historically unpopular president, she herself or whatever, who was historically unpopular as vice president, that was our best choice. No, it was the royalty and the entitlement of the Democratic establishment said, we're going with this person because they were going to go with Biden. Another thing, given how lopsided the election was, this probably wouldn't have made a difference. But the fact that Kamala Harris toured the country with fucking Liz Cheney, how is that anything other than trying to lose? I'm going to talk more about how she ran away from the left in the cope section, but there you go. Now, I will say something good. She was a class act the entire time. Her messaging, while very generic, was unifying and positive. And at the debate, I mean, she played Trump like a goddamn fiddle. And now for the cope. It's anybody's fault except Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party that we didn't win this election, right? First thing you'll hear is, just attacking third-party votes. Take every single battleground state and give every single third-party vote to Kamala Harris, and she still loses by a lot. Third party had absolutely nothing to do with it. You can make the argument that, for example, Jill Stein convinced Democrats not to vote for Kamala Harris, but that's completely stupid because she lost huge in these battleground states. And again, if they weren't going to vote for Harris, then vote for Jill Stein. But if you give all of Jill Stein's votes to Kamala Harris, she still loses. And again, you're just scapegoating somebody else. Kamala Harris needs to earn your vote. If she hasn't earned your vote, then you know whose fault that is? Hers and the Democratic Party. It's not the fault of people who she didn't earn their vote. You just gaslight the voter. But yeah, most of the cope I have seen so far has been something to the effect of I don't get it. We called everybody racist for years, and then we thrust a woman of color up there and they didn't pick her. What happened? I was certain that calling everybody racist and then saying if you don't vote for Kamala, it's because you're racist. I thought that would work. Did you guys know that Latinos are racist now? They're so racist that most of them voted for Kamala Harris. I just find this incredible, saying Latinos are racist, and apparently racist in favor of whites. Can you imagine walking up to like a Mexican person and saying, oh, I bet you're a white supremacist? But this is what the left does. Gaslight the voter instead of taking any accountability. Zero accountability. The right does it. Last time Trump lost, instead of being accountable, they just said that the election was fake. So are Latinos racist? No. Maybe the better explanations are, like, for example, Latin America is actually super Catholic, and it's not as progressive as suburban college students, want to think it is. Isn't it kind of racist to just be like, wow, a Mexican voting for Donald Trump? Huh. That's not what Mexicans are like, I thought. I mean, how is that anything other than just a blatantly ignorant and horrendous stereotype? But like Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Historically, Latinos, they've supported Democrats who have supported them in return, and they still mostly favor Democrats, but it is changing big time. But, when culture warriors started saying, no, you need to say Latinx, which Latinos hate, and, well, actually, an open border and no police would benefit society. You're just asking people to, you're asking for that demographic to walk away. This is a little bit of a tangent, but honestly, I think lefties are just becoming sheep to the right. They simply do whatever the opposite of what Trump says is. I don't know about you, but never in my life did I hear anybody talk about an open border as like somehow being a good idea until that basically became the polar opposite of what Trump wants. Another kind of side note, Prop 33 here in California, there was a different proposition that passed years ago, and it basically, it took certain theft, like of a certain dollar amount, and changed it from a felony to a misdemeanor, and there are a few other things. And I don't know if you've been on the internet at all, but the number of stores that have been robbed and carjackings in California, it's just absolutely unbearable. And you know what? California, a deep blue state, Prop 33, which basically, Prop 33 is a tough on crime bill. You can go read the details if you want. But that passed with 70% of the vote, over 70% actually, in deep blue liberal California. So no, lefties, you're wrong. Crime has nothing to do with how crime is policed. It's because of racism. Yeah. Just some kind of alarming and shocking numbers with regard to the Latino vote. Biden won 65% of the Latino vote, Harris 53. Ted fucking of all the things that happened yesterday, this is the most unbelievable. Ted Cruz went from -30 with Hispanics to +6. Ted fucking Cruz. And there's this county in Texas, I don't remember the name of it, but it's the most Hispanic county in the entire country. Trump won it by 16 points. I saw this video some guy made on TikTok basically saying, what the fuck is wrong with you white women voting for Trump? And the community, man, they really came out with some great answers here. Yes, call the largest voting demographic in the country hoes and pigs. How do these idiots wonder why they suck at politics? And of course, the general meta-narrative you'll hear from the culture warriors is that America is racist and sexist, plain and simple, which is just so fucking stupid. First of all, Trump actually underperformed with white, uneducated voters. And he underperformed in general. He got fewer votes than he did last time. But yeah, the country is so horny for racism and sexism that Donald Trump got 3 million fewer votes. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. The country preferred a woman. That's not how the Electoral College works. We all know that, but there you go. Nikki Haley she got primary votes, not a lot, but she's on the racist Republican Party ticket, right? But she was racist and sexist, which both of those would apply for her, I guess. But she won primary votes. Vivek Ramaswamy, he has one of the highest favorability ratings among conservatives. So I don't want to hear this cope about racism, sexism. Now, the culture warriors, the online people, that's what they're going to say. What about the media and the Democratic establishment? Well, of course, they're going to do kind of the exact opposite and blame us. They're going to blame the left. Oh no, Harris's campaign, they went too far to the left. The fuck they did. She was stumping with Liz goddamn Cheney. I don't know if this came from Harris's campaign or from the Democratic machine, like in general, but they had this brain dead idea that, if we appeal to Republicans, then we'll get moderate Republicans over to our side. No, you fucking idiots. Republicans are going to vote for Republicans. Meanwhile, you alienated people on the left. And we know that because she got 15 million fewer votes. I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet, but I bet it will get talked about that she picked the wrong running mate. If she would have gone with Josh Shapiro, then blah, blah, blah. No, because even if she'd have won Pennsylvania, she would have lost the election. And winning Pennsylvania wouldn't get you Michigan and Wisconsin or Arizona, Nevada. So it's not Tim Walz's fault. Now, to all the people saying there's never going to be another election ever again, I mean, fucking settle. 4 years is a disgusting timetable to think about having to wait. But I don't know. The Democratic Party might just literally try to lose another election by doing what I just said and trying to be more moderate and trying to... All of the most popular policy ideas in the country are left-leaning policy ideas like universal health care and shit like that. So maybe in 4 years we'll get the most unbearably weak candidate, or maybe we'll get somebody who's not to the left as much as I want, but like Gavin Newsom, who can just so easily wipe the floor with anybody on the right. I mean, he's really gifted and talented as a politician, and he's a white guy. But like, do you want to win? Do you want to get Supreme Court nominations, or do we want to just like virtue signal and lose every single time? Thanks for watching. Sorry the messaging is so negative, but well, everything kind of sucks right now. Tomorrow we'll go back to the lulls.